Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I want to start off the show today with a correction of something that I said on Wednesday. Wednesday, as you recall, was the Ask Me Anything. And one of the questions that I answered was about whether or not the Free State Project is picking up steam, losing momentum, etc. And I ran some numbers that I downloaded from the Free State Project website. And those numbers are only partially accurate. While the database that is downloadable from the Free State Project website does list people as movers, the date that they have listed for the mover is not the date that the person moved. Rather, it's the date that the person signed up for the Free State Project and then ultimately moved. So the figure that I cited was a figure of people that had signed up during a certain time period and then moved. And there has been some discussion in various Free State Project groups on Facebook about what number is correct. Was the 40% figure put out by the Free State Project correct? Was the number that I came up with using downloaded data correct? Well, it turns out that neither of those numbers is correct. However, there has been some number crunching that took place, and Ian Freeman has the story over at Free Keen, so let me read that. He says, according to Free State Project founder Jason Sorens, the database available on the FSP website does not actually catalog when movers moved, despite using the term mover in the database. The date shown there for each mover is apparently the date of signing the FSP statement of intent. So despite us double-checking the numbers, us being me and Ian, this confusion resulted in an inaccurate article that I posted earlier today. Here's a correction to that article. He writes, in the original article, I corrected, or so I thought, the incorrect and subsequently withdrawn article that was originally posted by the FSP that used bad numbers to determine that FSP movers numbered 36% of domestic migration from July 2013 to July 2014. Using the numbers provided by Darryl Perry, we determined that using a larger time frame of April 2010 to July 2014, the actual percentage of all migrants, including international, was 15%. However, due to bad data input, it turns out that the number is actually over 26%. He then writes, here's how I determined that FSP movers amounted to 26% of the net migration into New Hampshire from April 2010 to July 2014. First, I kept the same number of net migrants from the census data, which is 3,013. Then, using data from archive.org from April 2010 and July 2014, I determined that according to the numbers presented on the front page of the Free State Project website on those dates, that 810 people moved to New Hampshire in that time frame. So 810 divided by 3013 is 26.88%. That's an impressive percentage, especially if you consider that the FSP official move has not yet been triggered. When that happens at 20,000 signers, thousands more Liberty activist movers will be on the way. And then in post the wording of the press release that I mentioned on Wednesday that has since been removed from the FSP's website. But I just wanted to get that correction out there since I presented data on Wednesday, and then it came to my attention that that data was actually incorrect. And something that by next week might wind up being incorrect, not necessarily incorrect, but the facts could have changed by the time you listen to this if you are listening on a day other than Friday, February 27th. The story comes from Reuters. The U.S. Congress on Friday appears to be headed towards approving a 3-week-long stopgap funding bill for the Domestic Security Agency that postpones the threat of partial shutdown, but moves lawmakers no closer to a permanent solution. Now, what is this about exactly? Well, it would help if I read the title of the article instead of, well, and even the title doesn't really help because the title does not mention Department of Homeland Security. And that's what this is about. The funding for DHS is scheduled to run out at the end of the day today. The Republicans in the House pushed through a bill that funds the Department of Homeland Security, but does not include funding for immigration reforms that they see as some kind of unconstitutional overstep by the president, despite the fact that, the Constitution doesn't give the federal government, any authority to actually regulate immigration. But that's neither here nor there. It's just that, the Republicans say, well, it's unconstitutional, even though it's not. But, it's that weird game of, calling everything you don't like unconstitutional. So that's the game the Republicans are playing, or at least the Republicans in the House. They sent this bill over to the Senate, and even though the Republicans have a majority in the Senate, they do not have enough of a majority to overcome the threat of a filibuster. Not that anybody is actually filibustering, but just the threat of it means that you need 60 votes to not have a filibuster, and they don't have that because the Democrats in the Senate, they don't want this to go through as it is. So, they are holding it up, and actually there's the debate here of whether or not it's the Republicans to blame for not sending what is being deemed a clean spending bill, or whether it's the Democrats who are threatening a filibuster over a dirty bill. And so the House Speaker, John Boehner, is blaming the Democrats. Mitch McConnell in the Senate is actually blaming John Boehner, even though McConnell and Boehner are both Republicans. So in this scenario, McConnell seems sane. But nonetheless, the DHS funding, as of right now, is scheduled to end at the end of the day tonight at midnight. Let me continue with the article from Reuters. With only hours remaining before the Department of Homeland Security funding expires at midnight, the House of Republicans was pursuing a short-term funding extension. It would give Republicans more time to agree on a way to keep the agency open over the long term, while still fighting Democratic President Barack Obama over his immigration order, lifting the threat of deportation for millions of undocumented immigrants. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent, but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous, but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So back to the article here from Reuters about the funding for Homeland Security possibly maybe ending at midnight tonight, possibly maybe getting extended for 3 weeks. The article says the House voted 240 to 183 along strict party lines to approve a procedural rule that will allow a vote on the short-term extension later in the day. The measure would then go to the Senate for expected approval on Friday afternoon. The Senate on Friday followed a different path, approving a full-year $39.7 billion funding measure for Homeland Security that does exclude any of the restrictions. Yeah, so it says it does exclude any of the restrictions on Obama's immigration order that House Republicans had been demanding. The House was expected to ignore the Senate legislation for now, leaving Republican congressional leaders to spend the next 3 weeks trying to reconcile their differences on ways to pursue their fight against Obama's immigration action, which was temporarily put on hold by a federal judge. Discord between the two chambers created a chaotic 48 hours before the Friday midnight deadline, and the short-term extension offers only a brief respite from the brinkmanship. Now, before I continue here, let me offer my sort of 2 cents, my wisdom, if you will, to those in Congress. And it is rare that you ever hear me giving advice on how government can be more efficient. And just the thought even scares me. The thought that I will give such wise advice and that some government agency may actually wind up being more efficient, it terrifies me deep down in like the inner workings of my soul. But I will give this advice anyway. Okay, I really am having to prepare myself to even say this. Pass a clean funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security. Not because I think that the Department of Homeland Security should be in existence. I don't think that 99.9% of what is being done by DHS should even be done. But if you want to get this thing done, then pass a clean funding bill and then try to defund the immigration thing at a later point. I cannot even believe that I said that. I am not going to edit that out of this show. That's not how I do my show. I record the show, and then I upload the show. I don't edit things out, even when I say things that scare me to death. And why would it scare me to continue funding the Department of Homeland Security? Well, because it's the Department of Homeland Security that runs the TSA, the molestation station at the airport. Yeah, that's Homeland Security. It's Homeland Security that prevents people from entering the United States of America without jumping through proper hoops and hurdles and without having proper documentation. It is not the Homeland Security Department that patrols the waters between Cuba and Florida. That is the Coast Guard. But it is Homeland Security that otherwise controls immigration and border checkpoints. So I don't like Homeland Security. And it even scares me. The name Homeland Security. Why would the name Homeland Security scare me? Well, partly because it was, created in the wake of 9/11 and the whole, patriotic furor. That's F-U-R-O-R, not F-U-H-R-E-R. But it does bring that up in my mind. Homeland sounds very much like fatherland or motherland. Mother Russia, the fatherland of Germany, the homeland of America. It has that sort of feel to me. And the fact that, we have to have all of these government agencies under the umbrella of keeping the homeland secure, it just brings up bad thoughts within my mind that, and I think that's what George Bush was going for, is he wants bad thoughts, but he doesn't want you to think bad thoughts about the government. He wants you to think bad thoughts about, well, we have to keep the homeland secure from bad people. But in reality, it's the bad people that are running the homeland security, and they're terrorizing us. They're not protecting me from terrorists. They are terrorizing me when I go to the airport and I want to fly somewhere. Not that that happens very often, but when I do, I don't want to be radiated. I don't want these naked body scans. I don't want somebody grabbing me inappropriately. At least not without buying me dinner first and maybe a few drinks, but generally the person that's grabbing me, I wouldn't want them grabbing me even if they bought me dinner and a few drinks. So I would love to just see the Department of Homeland Security abolished. That is why I said it scares me that I am giving any kind of advice on how to keep it funded. Let me continue with the article. Senate Democrats have blocked a House-passed bill that included immigration restrictions 4 times. On Friday, they rejected a standalone bill aimed at blocking Obama's immigration orders. If the current funding is not extended by midnight Friday, spending authority will be cut off for the agency. And this is a little misleading here. Well, yes, technically there will be no funds given to Homeland Security, but the article says spending authority will be cut off for the agency that secures U.S. borders, airports, and coastal waters. The agency will be forced to furlough 30,000 employees. That's 30,000 out of 230,000, meaning that 85% of the crap that DHS does will still be done. The only difference is nobody gets paid for it until after a funding bill comes through. So it's going to be kind of like that government shutdown that happened a couple of years ago, to where the federal government spent more money keeping people out of open spaces than they would have spent to allow people to go in those open spaces. Some of the open spaces that I'm talking about are sidewalks near the National Mall, some of the open-air monuments around the National Mall. They actually wound up ramping up the number of national park police that were keeping people out of national parks. National parks that you otherwise don't have to pay to get into. They were keeping people out of national forest, etc. So hopefully, not only does DHS not get funded, hopefully it just gets abolished, but I know that's not going to happen. There's more when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. You can support FPP Radio by joining the FANS program. FANS are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. I trust Coinbase. You should too. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I know I've talked about Futurama in previous episodes, especially the Ask Me Anything episode where I was asked about time travel. And I said, I'm so glad I got asked this question because it allows me to talk about Futurama. Well, there's another story that reminds me of Futurama, and it specifically reminds me of President Nixon's head. When President Nixon runs for election in the year 3000, and he's asked the question, well, the Constitution says nobody can run for president more than twice. And he says, exactly, nobody. But I've got this new shiny robot body. And that's what this story reminds me of. Not that people are going to wind up getting robot bodies. Maybe somebody somewhere will, but the story comes from the Telegraph, and it says that the first human head transplant could take place in about 2 years. Italian surgeon Sergio Canavero from the Turin Advanced Neuromodulation Group claims Frankenstein-style procedures to graft a living person's body onto a donor body will soon be ready. The breakthrough surgery is being pioneered to help extend the lives of people who have suffered a degeneration of muscles and nerves, or those who have advanced cancer. The New Scientist report, and apparently that's the name of a magazine or some other journal, The New Scientist, reported Dr. Canavero plans to announce the project at the American Academy of Neurological and Orthopedic Surgeons Conference in Annapolis, Maryland in June. Dr. Canavero published a paper on the technique he would use in the Surgical Neurology International Journal this month. The recipient's head and the donor body would be cooled at the start of the procedure to extend the time that cells can survive without oxygen. The article continues, tissue around the neck would be dissected and major blood vessels would be joined using tiny tubes. The spinal cord would then be cut and the recipient's head moved onto the donor body. The ends of the spinal cord would be fused together using a chemical called polyethylene glycol, which is very similar to the chemical that they use, or at least similar in name, to the chemical that they use to de-ice aircraft, that is propylene glycol. And then there's ethylene glycol, which is something else that I don't remember exactly what it is. But this is polyethanol glycol, which they report here, encourages fat within cell membranes to mesh. After this, after putting the head from one person onto the body of another and then using little tubes to connect the arteries and polyethylene glycol to fuse the spinal cord together, the person would be put into a coma for around 4 weeks to prevent them from moving while they heal. Dr. Canavero said he would expect, and they're actually saying Mr. Canavero further down, but he's referred to as doctor earlier, so I'm going to continue to refer to him as doctor. Dr. Canavero said he would expect the patient to be able to move and feel their face when they awoke. They would speak with the same voice, and they should be able to walk within a year. Dr. Canavero first proposed the idea of the surgery in 2013, but at the time, other experts dismissed the idea. He told the New Scientist, quote, "If society doesn't want it, I won't do it. But if people don't want it in the U.S. or Europe, that doesn't mean it won't be done somewhere else. I'm trying to go about this the right way, but before going to the moon, you want to make sure people will follow. The first successful head transplant involving moving the head of one monkey to another was carried out in 1970 at the Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. The monkey lived for 9 days, but its immune system rejected the head." Now, I was not aware of there ever being a monkey that had a head transplant, but now that I am aware of this, it makes me even more skeptical of the head transplant surgeon, Dr. Canavero, and based on his sort of absurd idea here, I do believe I am going to start referring to him as Dr. Zoidberg if I ever get the chance to speak of him again, because in Futurama, it is Dr. Zoidberg who does all kinds of weird, wacky things. And there's the one episode where Fry loses his head and it gets put onto someone else's body, and then somehow something happens and an arm gets placed in the wrong spot and a leg gets put somewhere. And yeah, so the whole thing just seems rather odd to me. But I do think that we should learn something from the monkey head transplant experiment from the 1970s. It says here that the immune system of the body rejected the head. Now, what is Dr. Zoidberg here going to do to make sure that the donor body of a human will not reject the head of someone who is saying, hey, I've got this really bad body and I want a shiny new body, give me a body. So are they going to make sure that, the blood matches? Obviously, they're going to make sure that the blood matches, but are they, what else are they going to do to make sure that the body does not reject the head? And he doesn't specify in here how he's going to do that. And obviously, this is an article from the Telegraph that is basically summarizing something that he's going to be rolling out his full plans for in June. But it does leave a lot of unanswered questions. Like, how do you make sure that the donor body doesn't reject the head? Are you just, and let's go one step further, and why not just go to robot bodies? If you're already to the point to where you're saying, you know what, I can't live with this body anymore, keep my head alive and put it on something else. Why not just go ahead and jump straight to robot body? Put your head in that weird little fish food sort of, or, fishbowl looking thing that they use in Futurama to keep the heads alive, and then put that on a robot body. Why not just go ahead and jump straight to there? Do we have to do the human head to human body thing first before going human head to robot body? What do you think? Should Should this be something that is done, or is this just absolutely lunacy and it should never be tried ever? Don't forget, I've got the AMA every Wednesday. You can ask me questions. AMA@FPPradio.com. Online, in the meantime, FPPradio.com.